Hey guys, welcome to the Real Estate Startup Podcast. My name is Benjamin and I'm here with Michaela. And we've got a little mini episode where we're going to talk about seller financing, all things owner carry, owner finance, and what makes that so important in this market. Michaela, do you have any seller finance, owner finance strategy deals?
Yeah, so full disclosure, I do not own any houses that have the strategy of owner financing, seller financing, but I would love to. And so I'm excited to learn more about it and hear from you some of your thoughts, because I believe you do, right?
Yep. Yeah, I've done multiple deals. First one was back in 2019 where we bought a primary home. It was a house hack and we found a seller that was willing to carry the note or the mortgage. So seller financing is basically when the seller becomes the bank. You just pay them directly every single month, just like you would pay a bank. And it's so simple. And
Nice.
Yeah, it's so nice. And oftentimes people, I think as buyers, we think we're asking for a favor when actually it really benefits the seller in multiple ways. One, when you are seller financing a deal, you're not having to deal with maintenance. You're not dealing with taxes and insurance. You're not dealing with the whole management process. And so you're just getting paid. You're just making money, essentially interest off your money. And it is nice because it's just a paycheck. You don't have to worry about tenants and dealing with all that stuff. So for a seller, it's a great deal. And for a buyer, it's a great deal too, because, maybe you don't qualify for a loan or maybe you don't have, a big down payment. So for mine, I just put down 5% on this loan. And I think the interest rate was 5%. And they carried it for, a 30-year amortization. And I think we did I would refinance in 5 years if there was two conditions. It was if interest rates came down, I would refinance in 5 years. And if the appraised value went up enough to where I didn't have to put any money into it to refinance, we would do it.
Nice.
And
cool.
And so I ended up refinancing it actually because rates came down and the value went up. And so I just did it on my own. And it actually, I think it saved about $400 or $500 a month because my rate went from 5% to 3%.
It's amazing.
And the value went up. So that was pretty cool. It was a great deal. We closed in 7 days and we moved in.
So nice.
It was a house hack. There's an in-law unit. We rented out and we lived there. And then we moved out and became a rental. And then more recently, the other kind of relevant story is I bought a commercial building and they were willing to carry. And so I did a pretty big down. I think it was $75,000 down on maybe a less than $200,000 property. I think I owe a little under $100,000 and I pay them $500 a month. So it was a pretty simple deal.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, one thing I've heard about just advantages for a seller doing owner financing, because I used to think the same thing. I'm like, why on earth would someone just not get all their money up front? But then the more I've researched it, the more, especially in this market, you hear a lot more about it. One of the main advantages is tax benefits for the seller. You get, if you can hold the note and you can, spread out your payments, then, and a lot of people will do a 5 or 7 year balloon like you were talking about, so that they have to pay it off within those 5 or 7 years. Some people do no balloon, so then essentially up to 30 years. But even if you've got a 5 or 7 year balloon, you're spreading out at least the first chunk of payments in a way that it makes it a lot easier for some people when it comes to taxes. So that's something I didn't realize initially. And so that alone is why there's actually several people actually that prefer to do seller financing with their properties. They don't want to sell it all at once because of the tax benefits. So do you have any thoughts on that side of it?
You're right. No, you're absolutely right. That's such a great play as a seller is you're slowly paying taxes on your income versus one big lump sum of cash and then having to pay taxes on that. So yeah, my dad has done that. My father-in-law, they've done a lot of seller financing because of that reason. And no, I think it's such a great play. I think more seasoned investors obviously have that option in their tool belt because they've paid off properties and they're at that point where, they don't want to pay they're thinking about, they're in retirement, they're thinking about legacy, they're thinking about passing on their their wealth to the next generation. So, I mean, these are things you got to think about as you age. You got to think about, okay, just the transferring of wealth and what does that look like, and setting that up. But even, if you're a young investor and you have stuff paid off, I mean, it's a great way to, and also, it's less risky in some ways. I mean, there is the risk that the buyer will, or the, who you're lending to will stop paying you. And so the worst case there is that you have to foreclose on them. And that's never fun, right? That could bring a lot of stress. But that is a risk that you have to deal with, is, lending to someone that, if they have a hard time or if they can't fill a unit, then they need to, they stop paying you. That's something that wouldn't be fun.
Yeah, I've heard some people talk about it though, as buyers going to negotiate with sellers about seller financing, basically saying like they kind of put this contract together that ensures the seller that if I, as the buyer, do not pay my mortgage within 30 days, they take back the property, and they put that in the contract so that it gives this confidence to the seller. It's like, well, okay, they said if they can't pay within 30 days, then I take it back no matter what payments have been paid. So, and I've heard of this happening where the seller actually gets their property back, but now it's appreciated in value. They've already received years of payments sometimes. And so it's almost like this fail-safe thing. If you can have it in writing, to where if you are the seller and you have this in writing, it can be a pretty powerful strategy and pretty well protected, because it's, again, a real estate backed. It's an asset that's a real asset, tangible piece of property. And so that's, again, one of the coolest things about real estate. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that side of it?
Yeah, no, I think that's brilliant. I think it's amazing. I think I didn't know that people were putting that in a promissory note. Typically that's where that would be. Another thing I just was thinking about and would like to bring up is the benefits of negotiation, because you don't really get to negotiate much with the bank on interest rate,
That's
down
right.
payment. It kind of is what it is.
Yeah.
But with a seller, you can negotiate the terms. And oftentimes that is really amazing for the buyer, because we hear this often, that the strategies are like price or terms. Like, which one do you want as a seller, right? Like, if you want the price, I'll give you your price, but give me really good terms. Or they might be like, I'm not so worried about the price, I'm more concerned about the terms. And so really it's finding a win-win solution. That's what I love about owner finance or seller finance, because it creates this like place of negotiating with the seller versus having to go through an agent, which I did go through an agent on both of my deals. But oftentimes these deals are negotiated at the dinner table, outside on the porch. Like, you hear these stories where that's where, these are done. And so I think just the flexibility of working with a seller is amazing because of the terms you can get.
I totally agree. I think it makes me want to go out and buy a bunch of seller financing houses. I mean, I'm always looking, and I would say to people that are looking like me in my shoes, there's ways to find these properties. And if you have better ways, please send a message, a DM, and give us your suggestions. But I think some of the core ways, again, that someone might be able to find that is, you can actually ask wholesalers, for example, to go look for seller financing deals for you, and then you pay them a fee. And you can do the same with agents. You can do that as long as they're getting their payment, and you can kind of factor that into your buying process. You can find a lot of good deals by having someone else go and look for you. And then another way you can do it is, there's a lot of Facebook groups that have like, almost every state and city will have like seller finance deals in Tennessee, in California. And so a lot of people will pop deals on there. There's a lot of just real estate groups in general. You can always kind of go in there. You can actually search in the search bar of those groups, seller finance, owner finance. I usually look for both of those categories. And the same on like Zillow or Trulia or any of the apps for the MLS, is you can put that in the search word section, the keyword section, put seller financing or owner financing, and see what pops up. And even if it's not listed, I would say looking at properties that are 30 to 60 days on market, sometimes just going to those, sellers agents and being like, hey, would they consider owner financing if you're paid? If we pay you, would they consider owner financing? And I've heard a lot of stories of people having a lot of great results with that. So
one thing to add, sorry
yeah.
to interrupt, but I think it's important to also mention that certain asset classes or types of properties, it's more normal to see seller financing. So for example, single family homes, not as common because there's conventional lending, there's FHA government-backed loans, and it's more common to have a bank involved. But for properties like mobile home parks, storage units, commercial, oftentimes getting a bank loan is more difficult. And so it's easier. Oftentimes sellers are more willing, and it's more common to see those kind of transactions in those asset classes. So if you don't have a lot of capital, maybe you want to just jump in and go big and go for more commercial, I would look into those asset classes: storage units, mobile home parks, land. A lot of people do land. Land is probably one of the biggest.
A lot.
And it's easy. People will finance the land so that you can go and get a bank loan to build a house on it, or property, or you need multiple houses, whatever it is. So I would look into land, mobile home parks, storage units, even businesses, different types of laundromats, any kind of business. People will
car washes
will seller finance those gems. So
I think along those lines, just to wrap up, I would say I've heard of a lot of multifamily properties, specifically, the smaller multifamily, but larger than 4 units. So something like 5+ all the way up to 16 or 32, that kind of range. I've heard of a lot of people finding awesome seller financing deals because a lot of these are mom and pop owners that bought these 30, 40, 50 years ago. And they are now the ones that are retiring, like you're talking about, and they need to, they want to offload the asset, but they still want a cash flow.
And not operate
but because they bought it seller financing, a lot of them are willing to do the same thing to the next owner. So it's an interesting kind of niche market there. I've always been really curious about. So let us know in the comments and DMs if you guys how you're finding your deals. I'd be curious to see how that's playing out. But thank you so much, everyone, for hopping on this bonus episode. And any other thoughts, Benjamin?
That's it.
All right. Peace out, guys. We'll see you next time.
See ya.